Everybody, welcome to the Chess Harbor. My name is Raf and today I want to show you another game from the Club Chess Championship. I was playing white. I started with the move d4 and my opponent played the move knight f6. I had prepared for my opponent a little bit. I knew that if I would play the Queen's Gambit, he played the Budapest Gambit and I wanted to decline him from playing that. So I played the move knight f3, which is actually my preferred move order to get into kind of a Catalan setup. It does allow some other defenses by black. For example, it does allow the move b5, which would clamp down on the move c4. But this is a very interesting way of playing because it actually declines a lot of gambits involving the move e5. It also is a kind of nice waiting move to see what black is going to do, because if black plays something you don't like in the Queen's Gambit, you can always transpose to something like a London, something like a Coley setup or a Zukertort setup with bishop to b3, or you can always get to the Catalan with the move g3. So it's a really kind of a flexible move to play the knight f3 on the second move, which is what I really like about this kind of variation. So my opponent was forced to play something else. He decided on the move d5, and now I just continue with my normal setup. I play the move g3. And he played the move bishop to g4, which is quite an aggressive way of playing against the Catalan. So first developing these queenside pieces instead of focusing on the kingside development is usually a little risky, especially in the queen's pawns game. Leaving the bishop early could often be prone to move c4 or c3 and queen check on a4 or queen to b3, targeting the weaknesses on the light squares. So it was quite an aggressive way of playing for my opponent, and we're going to see that it's not always good to do that. So I played the move bishop to g2 now. I want to defend the knight, of course. If his threat is to take, I have to take back with the e-pawn. I have this damaged structure, and there would be some long-term weakness, so I don't want that. I played the move knight to c6, and that's another inaccuracy. As I said, it's a very aggressive system. He wants to maybe play e5 really fast, maybe even castle queenside to start launching these kingside pawns at me. But it actually leaves the position with quite a lot of weaknesses that we can abuse. And the first move that we play already makes advantage of that. It's the move knight to e5. If he trades, I take back. You do get doubled e-pawns, but the e-pawn on e5 controls two very important squares. It controls the square d6 and f6, which would block his knight from ever reaching f6, and the move and the square on d6 also blocks his bishop from getting there. So it's a very annoying pawn, and it would also make this pawn very weak. So you can't do that. You can't take here, because then you can immediately capture on d5 afterwards. It would already be bad. But it also attacks his bishop, and his bishop is the prime defender of these light squares on the queen side. So he plays the bishop back to e6, which quite surprised me, because of course he is protecting his pawn now, but the bishop blocks his e-pawn, so it's looking a little odd. I decided that this would be a good moment to capture on c6, doubling his queenside pawns, because now his queenside pawns are vulnerable, and I can try and use that, especially with my bishop on the long diagonal. This is actually a really nice position for me. So I start with the move c4. Even though this looks like it's hanging a pawn, he can take here, but then of course this move would immediately win material. So he cannot take, let me show you, he cannot take on c4, because then this move would be absolutely destructive, already leading to material loss. So he can't do that. Of course, this would leave some lasting long-term weaknesses on my light squares as well, but there's ways of playing against that. You have the move f3, for example, which would defend. So the move c4 is already kind of hard for my opponent to deal with. So he decided on the move rook to b8, just stepping out of this long diagonal, which is actually not that bad, because if I would take here, I do repair his structure as well. So that's actually a decent way of replying against this, but I still have this long-term pressure against these pawns. So I just castle. Now my opponent plays queen to c8. His idea is very clear. He wants to trade off my bishop. I ignore that. I play knight to d2. My idea is very simple. I want to play the move e4. If he takes on c4, I can also capture back with the knight now, and my knight can very easily go to e5. So the knight on d2 is great here. He plays bishop to h3. And now I want to take advantage of this again. I play the move queen to a4. I attack two pawns. I attack the pawn on c4, on c6 and on a7. And this is nice because, of course, this is with check. So he feels the need to defend with bishop to d7. And now I can retreat with queen to c2. Again, looking to play against these pawns. So he plays the bishop back to h3. And now I have gotten exactly what I want. Of course, I can try to get queen to a4 in again with some kind of repetition. Maybe you move back, maybe you do something else, but the queen is actually very good on h2 now, on c2 now. And now I take on d5, and my opponent already makes a mistake here. If he takes back here, the position is not level, but the material is level, and I have something to play for. I can look to maybe even take here and give some kind of check here, or take his pawn, and the position would be a little bit awkward for him. So here I could definitely win some material. Let's say I take on h3, his queen takes on h3, and I take on c7. This could already be better for me because I have his king in the center. He's gonna have to retreat his queen, and then I trade off the queens. I'm just gonna be up one pawn, which should be enough, especially if it's on the queen side, to win in an endgame. But my opponent instead makes another mistake. He plays bishop to g2, which also lets me win a pawn. It lets me take on c6 with check on his king. Now he has to play queen to d7. I play queen takes on d7, king takes on d7, and king takes on g2. So now I do have currently two extra pawns because this pawn hasn't been captured back yet, but yeah, that pawn is going to drop immediately with knight takes on d5. And now I play a3. Just want to limit the scope of his knight. This also limits the scope of his bishop later. He plays the move e6, and I play move b4. So I don't want him to play the move a4 or c5, a5 or c5. I also want to limit the scope of his bishop and his knight. He plays the bishop out to d6, and I play knight to e4. I hit the bishop, which is nice, but the knight is really just looking at this juicy c5 square now because that square is extremely weak. He plays the move e5. I play knight to c5 check, king to c6, and bishop to e3. This was a little bit of an ugly move, but I couldn't really see another good way of defending this pawn. And actually, even if he takes here, he immediately repairs my pawn structure, but these doubled pawns on the e-file also looked quite okay because I have a rook on the f-file. So actually, I was completely fine with him doubling my pawns. It actually looked quite good. I get some pressure against this position as well. So he does take it. I take back with the e-pawn, and now we can see this in action. So my rook on the f-file is now suddenly pretty good because it pressures his position. He's forced to play the move f6, and now I can switch my rook back on the c-file because now, of course, it's not doing anything on the f-file. Might as well put it on the c-file then, setting up some kind of discovered attack, which he covers with the move king to d5. Now I play rook to d1. I was hoping to get some kind of funny checkmate in this position. If he moves forward in this position, let's say he does something stupid, I can actually force him into some kind of funny checkmate-ish position, where he's going to be pushed around a lot. So this could be fun for me. Now he plays rook to b5. I play e4 check and goes back with the king. So now we could see that this would be a very funny mate. He didn't fall for that, too bad. So he moves back to c6. I give a check on d5. So this position has become very nice for me, even though I have these doubled pawns, which do look kind of ugly. This pawn is absolutely great on d5. It really clamps down on his position. My knight is great. So he moves away with his king, and now I get my knight on e6. So you see the power of this pawn on d5. It controls his position. His rook is kind of stuck now. My knight is an absolute monster here. Plays rook to g8 to defend his pawn. Put my rook back on the c file. Plays move a5. First I start with the move rook to c6 check. He has to move back with the king. Now I take his pawn. And for some reason he doesn't take back. I thought he takes back. Now he has pressure against this pawn with his bishop and his rook. But I can just step out, kind of harass his king. The position still has some play for him. Of course it's not good, but there is some play for him left. This pawn is always going to be weak. This pawn is always going to be weak. This pawn is super strong. But he decided to play rook to a8. I guess he just wanted to take back with this rook instead. But this now leaves some extra holes in his position. So I first start by playing this check, which allows me to trade off a pair of rooks. Now I can play rook to c1 again. So this pawn can be taken by his bishop, but then I can immediately take back this pawn, and then his other pawns would fall. So he plays his king back, but now I get to take another pawn with knight takes on g7. Now he plays rook to b2. I get it because this attacks this pawn with check instead of taking this first. But I can move in with the rook to c6 check, king to b7, and now king to f3. He can play this check on the king, but then I can block it with the pawn, and even though that looks really risky, maybe at some point allowing the rook and the bishop to double up on it, and this would still drop that pawn, of course. My king is becoming more active and his position is really passive. My knight is now also ready to attack more targets, so he takes on a3 finally. Now I go after his other pawns with knight to e8. So I hit the pawn on f6, I hit the pawn on c7. He plays rook to b3, I just block it. Currently he can't even double up on me because my rook is controlling the entire c file. He plays rook to b6. I take on c7, and he just resigned because, yeah, the position now, it has become completely hopeless. I am up 2 pawns. This pawn is going to fall, this pawn is going to fall, and my position is looking absolutely lovely with very little counterplay for him. And to be fair, it all started in this position when he decided to play bishop out to g4, especially because if I play bishop to g2, he should still take my knight. That is the entire reason to play his bishop out to g4 quite early. If you play the bishop out, you should swap it off for any piece possible. Allowing the knight to step forward outside of the scope of the bishop, especially attacking it, is really no good, because you can see in the game that these light square weaknesses are very apparent. After the move c4, with the long diagonal, my opponent's already in trouble. Especially if you look a couple of moves later, where I get the queen out to a4, hitting the weak point on c6. That's really what the Achilles heel was in this game. So my opponent, let it be a lesson for anyone else trying to play an aggressive system like this. You should play it as aggressively as possible and really try and just swap off this knight, then improve the pieces and immediately castle queenside. I'm not saying that it's good for black, but it is better for black, and then you can at least get some attack going, which especially in faster time controls is going to be very hard for white to actually defend against. White's attack on the queen side is quite fast as well, but the attack on the king side for black is also very fast with h5, h4. So if you want to give this a try for both for white and for black, remember that this bishop just needs to be traded off, and then just start shoving the pawns forward and castle queenside as quickly as possible. So that'll be it for this game. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.